You must care, and it's the philosophy of great people in business. One of the things to think about is not about all the activities that you can be doing as an agent, but ultimately how you're actually changing fundamentally your relationship with your existing customers. Let me give you a great story. A few months ago, there was a property that was on the market, maybe 3 or 4 doors up from mine. I was coming home after a late night at work, and as I was turning into the back laneway of my house, all of a sudden I see that there's a signboard up with an agent in my local area. Now I know that particular local agent. I've seen them before. They wave at me in the street, they know where I live. In fact, they even get things like the daily email. And off the back of that, one of the interesting conversations was that there was no communication. There was no call, there was no email, there was no SMS, there was no direct mail, there was no letterbox drop, there was nothing to advise me that particular property had been listed for sale. Now you might say, okay, great, maybe something slipped through the system. But at the end of the day, what it really says to me is that there was no advantage in me being that particular agent's past client. So the interesting conversation is all about understanding that the reason why I'd want to know that that particular property is being listed before it gets listed on market is because that might allow me to go to the bank, get my finance sorted, and maybe go and buy that particular property. Or I might be able to put up my hand and say, hey, if you've got an overflow buyer left over during the course of that campaign, make sure you keep my property in mind because I might think of selling. So there's no conversation about the property being listed. We go 4 weeks, I happen to be away. When I came back, all of a sudden I see there's a sold sticker that's been applied to that particular board. Again, there's no SMS, there's no email, there's no phone call, there's no direct mail, there's no letterbox drop. So off the back of that, I don't know what it's sold for. And the interesting thing is, if that agent had multiple buyers left over, more people that are in a position that would like to buy a property similar to mine, up or down the price ranges, however it worked, what that meant for the future value of my asset and whether or not that now meant that I might be able to use that equity to go and buy an investment property, all of these questions, and none of them were answered by that particular agent. Now you might say, you know what, we live in a very different world, but I just don't understand why we build a huge database and then we actually do nothing with the data that's in it. The power of business is about really understanding what we're going to call the data lake. And sitting inside of that data lake is all of the information that you've been gathering around all of these customers. It's about being smart at the open for inspection. So when someone says, hey, I live locally, I'm one of the neighbors, find out what number they are in the street. Because then that way, when it's actually been listed or there's another sale that happens in and around that area, you can get on the phone and let them know about that particular transaction. And this is such an important part. You see, I now take it that this particular agent, because they made the decision to not want to communicate around that particular transaction, that they're actually just not interested in me and me ever being a future customer of theirs. And this is such an important part around what it is that we do. We have to get seriously good and understand that what we're now doing today is we're actually building relationships so we can profit from them later on down the track in the future. We've got to move away from the instant gratification of the right now listings and start to really understand the power of actually building relationships that are transformative. This is the most important part in being in business. You must care, and you must care for the people that are on the inside of your customer base.